little bit.
I can see it in your eyes.
Yeah.
Perspective.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is 7 o'clock, so I'd like to go ahead and welcome everybody to tonight's April 19th, 2022, the Dayton City Council. Roll call, please, Ms. Ledger.
Mayor Baker,
Here.
Member Volter,
Here.
Member Deary,
Here.
Member Neiman. Here. Member Kelly.
Here.
Member Donovan.
Here.
Member Baszler.
Here.
City Administrator Fawcett.
Here.
City Attorney Evans.
I appreciate all that can make it tonight. If everyone would please rise and honor a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. The first thing on our agenda this evening is the mayor's report, and we actually have a pretty exciting mayor's report this month, and is with the community center. So I think we all know down on 2nd Street we have what people call the old YMCA, which was built back in the 90s to be a community center, which then became an after-school program space for the YMCA. And by council's direction, in the last month, we made some major changes to the YMCA, which we'll now call a community center. So it was used for storage, it was used for an occasional event, but now we're going to use this community center as an ongoing space for Dayton meetings, for community events, and occasionally people can rent it out if they want to use it for a rehearsal dinner or maybe a wedding. Anything, we're up to listen to what people wanted to do. But on the screen here, you can see some of the major changes that we've already made for this space. You can see that we've made additional storage areas for city staff, for civic club holdings, and we're removing the flooring, which was kind of in really bad disrepair. We're going to replace that with some nice new carpet. It's going to smell real good inside this building here in the next month or so. And we're really excited. I know that Public Works, Mr. Lucas and your team, and Mr. Neary has given a lot of volunteer times because he's retired. And we're going to have the space ready within the next month. So hopefully the next city council meeting will be held there. If not, the one directly after that will be. So I'm really excited to be able to announce that we're re-energizing that neighborhood, activating a building that's been there for a while and just not been used, and be able to have nice professional meetings for all of our staff and community, of course, because it's a community center. That's all I have on this month's mayor's report. So moving on the agenda, do we have a motion to accept the minutes from the March 1st, 2022 and March 15th, 2022 meetings? Member Volter moved. Do I have a second? Second by Member Neiman. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? Motions are accepted. The next, which is not on your agenda because I kind of wanted to be a little bit surprised, is I want to give a presentation tonight. We have a great neighborhood here in the city of Dayton. We look out for each other. We're all family. And about a month and a half or so ago, one of our friends, our neighbor's mother went missing. She was an elderly lady, and not sure of the medical issue that happened, but she wasn't communicating with her family. And so we put out on the APB, I think it was on Facebook, and we had all our community members looking for this lady. And luckily enough, we have a member of our community who is very vigilant, and he saw her over at Hansman's. And he called the police, I believe, and she was reunited with her family. That's the kind of neighbors that we have in the city of Dayton. And the neighbor that helped our neighbors is Tom Dills. And Tom, would you mind addressing, or not addressing, but you can if you want. But Tom, I just want to recognize you tonight, and we recognize you with an award. It's the Dayton Good Neighbor Award. It's for selfless acts of kindness encouraged towards his fellow community members in Dayton, Kentucky.
Hold on there for a photo op.
So Tom, thanks for being a great neighbor.
Do what anybody would have done.
We appreciate that. Thanks again, Mr. Diltz. I know the Walls family appreciates you. Thanks again, sir. Next, we have up a local Kentucky Court of Appeals judge. She's a candidate in the upcoming election, Mrs. Suzanne Citro. Would you please, if you have comments you'd like to say, or whatever.
Hit the little button there that turns it on.
Okay.
And go.
Thank you. Yes, I am Judge Suzanne Citrullo. I'm your Court of Appeals judge. My chambers is in Campbell County Courthouse. I live in Kenton County, and I have the privilege of running to keep my position on the court in 13 counties. So I'm very new to politics, but I do have 30 years of practice as an attorney. That's 7 years working for the Court of Appeals as a staff attorney for the former judge. So I was honored to be appointed to this position this summer, and I'm serving and working hard for the Commonwealth. But it is a bit daunting to be a politician and have to go, especially to 13 counties. And I found as I've been doing that one of the best things to do is to talk to city council members who run nonpartisan races, which mine is for the court, and people who know their community. And you all, I've Googled you all. You are very blessed to have a very impressive, or I guess the city is very blessed to have a very impressive group of council members. So thank you for your service. I'm here to ask for your advice. If you have any thoughts or directions as I try to keep this position. It is a very important court, and my experience is, I think, very important to that court. Most people don't understand the court system now, and certainly not the Court of Appeals, because they don't have any interaction with them. I can tell you that since I've been on the Court of Appeals in September to now, I've heard several cases involving city councils and fiscal courts and small boroughs, but you guys are good because you've got this really smart city administrator that I happen to know and a tremendous mayor. So I think you're in good hands. But I did just want to, again, just introduce myself because I'm new to this. But if any of you have any questions for me, any advice or guidance, I've given those of you on council a little template that tells you how you can get a hold of me, and just keep me in mind in November. I know you have much more important business to talk about than that, though, so I'll leave.
Thank you, Judge. Does
Thank you.
anybody from our council or audience have any questions for the judge?
Thank you.
Any
Appreciate your
legal
time.
questions?
What's that?
Is she answering legal questions?
I recommend against that, but she can choose to or not.
Well, since you're sitting next to the good neighbor, I think all I can tell you is that for about 30 years, I did State Farm work, so like a good neighbor, but not to your caliber. No. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Next up on the agenda, we have the audit presentation by Mr. John Chamberlain of Chamberlain Owned and Company Incorporated. Mr. Chamberlain, the floor is yours, sir.
All right, thank you very much, Mayor, appreciate it. My name is John Chamberlain, I'm a partner at CPA and partner at Chamberlain Owned and Company in Erlanger, and I appreciate the opportunity to do the audit work for the city of Dayton. Jay and Donna and their staff take really good care of our team when we were there. We were there in December. We finished most of this work in January, and then we had to wait for the Bellevue Dayton audit, which is a part of your audit because you do own that as an investment almost with the city of Bellevue. And so we have to wait for that audit to be completed before we can finish your books up. And then I think your agenda was busy in March. So I'm here in April. So it seems like a long time ago when we were working on this. So, but I appreciate you guys and thank you for having me. Just want a few slides. I don't think you guys have financial statements, so I'm not going to really dive into the details of the financial statements. I know Jay's looked at them and Donna, and they've reviewed them very closely. I'm just going to give you a few highlights and maybe everybody can stay awake that way. So the auditor's opinion is what we call an unmodified opinion, meaning no modifications are being made to the opinion. And that your financial statements are fairly stated, and that's the highest opinion. That's what you want from us. That's what we call a clean opinion. The next slide just shows, as a part of every audit, we do review internal controls. We look at your segregation of your duties, the transactions, the receipts of cash, disbursements of cash, purchasing fixed assets, anything like that. So we look at all those controls and we look for segregations and make sure that those exist for the city and that your riskiest assets are protected. And we found no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal control. And so that's a good thing. And then as a part of every governmental audit, we also review compliance. So this is compliance with any bond covenants, debt covenants, compliance with KRS, with your SURS contribution rates. And we have no issues of non-compliance to report as well. So good job there. As a part of the audit, we issue what's called a governance letter. And that you should have a copy of that in front of you. And it's pretty much a boilerplate letter, but it's our opportunity to communicate directly to you and give you any problems that we may have found. And we really just had two audit adjustments. One was an adjustment in the general fund, and that was really just to put you on the same foot with Bellevue and with the fire department and how they recognize an expense over there. And then the other one is a planned audit adjustment that we make every year to give it. It's really right now it's a loss for the fire department each year, and that's the change in the net position of the value of that investment. So we did those. This is a capital asset comparison over a couple of years, and you see there your green is your cash, your blue is your capital assets, and then the red is that change in investment in the fire department that I mentioned earlier. Rule of thumb is to have 3 months of operating cash on hand. For Dayton, that'd be about $1.1 million. You have $3.2 million in cash on hand on June 30th. That's about 9 months of cash. That's not standing cash position. Your cash strong. You don't have to worry about that. You did purchase some capital assets this year. So that took just a little bit of cash, but you recovered from last year when you did a significant amount of capital assets in 2020. Debt-wide comparison, The yellow are just current fund liabilities, and those are about the same year to year. You can see those don't change dramatically. The red is any long-term debt you have, and that's mainly capital lease payable for the fire truck, and then compensated absences for employees. So that's only about $183,000. The 5.9 million, that's your surge unfunded liability. We've talked about that a lot. If you ever have questions on that, I'm happy to answer those. Probably better not in the public forum because I can go on and on. But that's what that is. It's not a bill that you're going to get, necessarily like a normal debt, but that's clawed back from the CERS and the pension authority through higher rates. And so those higher rates that you're paying, and you've seen those higher rates in CERS, is to help that unfunded liability be decreased. Okay. Revenues versus expenditures. 2021 had a gain of around $113,000 compared to a $296,000 loss in the previous year. You recognize about $320,000 in CARES Act funds, and then offset of $67,000 expenditures for urban renewal, and then capital improvements. So you had significant capital improvements last year, and that's why that drop in expenses that you see there. You didn't do as many capital expenditures this year as you did last year. General revenues increased just about 1%, and expenditures decreased about 8%. Total revenues, right at $4.4 million, again, almost a percent increase, 0.6% increase. Taxes right at $2 million. It's actually a 21% increase. So your valuations are obviously going up. Licenses and permits right at $1.5 million, a 14% increase. And charges for services, so these are things like your trash and things like that, at $388,000, and that's just a slight decrease in that. Expenditures, total expenditures $4.3 million, about an 8% decrease over last year. And like I said, you had significant capital expenditures last year. You didn't do as much this year, so that's really where that stems from. Police expenditures were up about 3.3%, $1.2 million. Fire and EMS right at $1 million, almost 0.9% increase. Professional services $582,000, about an 8% increase. And general government about a 17% decrease, right at $480,000. Public works about $380,000, again about a 2.5% increase. These next couple of slides, and you have them, and I think Don has these for you, either on the website or something like that. But you can see these, and these are just over a 5-year comparison. You can kind of see where each department has been over the last few years. I always find these kind of interesting. So that's the police. And you can just scroll through these. The fire expenditures there. You can see how they're pretty standard over the last couple of years. Public works, in general government, and then waste collection is the final. So pretty standard there. I said I wouldn't get into the financial statements in too much detail. I did want to point out that you have current assets and the statement of net position of right at $3.7 million. Capital assets, net of depreciation of right at $3.7 million, and then deferred outflows of another $1.4 million. So your total assets for the city about $8.8 million. Total liabilities, your current liabilities, including current portions of leases, about $455,000, and then non-current liabilities, right about $8.4 million. 5.9 of that is the pension and OPEB unfunded liability, so that everybody has. So total liabilities and deferred revenues, and deferred inflows, I should say, right at $9 million. So your total net position is a negative $200,000. It's not unusual, again, that deferred liability or the deferred, the pension liability is got everybody. It makes everybody look upside down, and that's just not the case. When you go to your governmental funds, you see that you have a fund balance well over $3 million. So you have a very solid fund balance in your governmental funds. So when your surge liabilities and all that stuff is taken out, the financials. You see that. So good, solid financial position. The city's in a good position, good cash position. You're meeting budget. Your budget to actuals are in the financial statements in the back. I do encourage you to read those. I do encourage you as a city council, it's your fiduciary responsibility to understand the financial operations of the city, and that's more than just passing a budget. Know your financial statements, read them, read the notes, understand what they are, and if you have questions, feel free to ask. I love talking about this stuff, and so would be happy to bore you to tears. I mean, would be happy to explain these things in the most ridiculous manner possible. So, any questions? Anything that I can answer?
Mr. Chamberlain, so you're saying overall we're in a very good position.
Absolutely.
How do you see with the increasing rises of CRS? How does that look to our position moving forward in the next 5 years or whatever?
Yeah, and that's hard to predict. I'm waiting for the June 30th, 2021 numbers to come out. They look a little better. I haven't seen the actual by city numbers, but the totals are less. The unfunded liabilities totals are less than they were last year, so that's a good thing. The percentage funded, I think, changed from 57 to 62 in one of the programs. So that's a good sign that maybe with the combination of the market and then and these increased costs that you've been paying, that we're finally getting a handle on that liability and turn it around, kind of going the other direction. So we'll see. Like I said, I'm waiting for the finals by city and for the 2021 to come out to really see what it looks like. The measurement year 2020. So these are all done on the measurement year 2020. So they're a year old. Now almost 2 years old. So when the 2021 comes out, we'll have a better understanding of that. But the one thing is you're in the boat with everybody else. So that's you're no different, you're no better, you're no worse than anyone else in that regard, unless they just don't have staff, or no one's in service. So,
Thank you.
sure.
Council administration, do we have any questions for Mr. Chamberlain?
Yeah, I do, sir.
Sure.
It was interesting on that one slide you pointed out the CPRS went from 2 million to almost 6 million in the long-term liability in only five fiscal years.
There's a little bit of discrepancy there because in 2018, they added the other post-employment benefits, which is the health insurance benefits. We added that to the schedule in 2018.
So it'd be better to compare 2018 to 2021.
Exactly, yes. That jump there. Yeah, now when you compare 18 to 21, you're exactly right. It goes from 3.7 to 5.9. But some of that jump in 18 was adding the OPEB. And you can see that in the financial statements. There's 10-year disclosures in the back of the financial statements that show that.
The other question is actually from one for administration. You show a pretty healthy fund balance there. Does that fund balance include our commitments to match some of these larger grants? Because we have not spent that cash yet.
Correct.
Okay. I just want to make that clear because
Probably over $1 million in future matching grants that have to be paid, so we're out of money to pay that.
okay, thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Chamberlain? All right, well, we certainly appreciate your time this evening and your report. Have a good evening, sir.
Thank you very much.
Next on the agenda is if anybody from the audience would have any comments, complaints, concerns about this evening's upcoming agenda that for legislation that is on tonight's agenda. So if you have any questions, the stage is yours.
You will see it. Give her time to think.
All right, so we won't do that then. Gotta ask. All right, so moving right along the agenda, the second reading tonight is ordinance 2022, number 4, amending the subsection 10.16 of the City of Dayton zoning code, codified in in chapter 154 of the Dayton Code of Ordinances to modernize use, dimensions, and development controls within the industrial zone, I-1 zone. I have a motion to accept the second reading.
So moved.
Member Volter's moved. Do I have a second? Second by Member Baszler. Do you have any comments regarding ordinance 2022, number 4? No comments, man. Please have a roll call.
Member Bolter?
Aye.
Member Neary?
Aye.
Member Neiman?
Aye.
Member Kelly?
Aye.
Member Lovins? Member Baker?
Aye.
The ayes have it, 100%. Next on the agenda is the second reading of ordinance number 2022, number 5, amending the official zoning map of the City of Dayton to rezone 23 parcels of property bordered by Main Street, Benham Street, 3rd Avenue, and 4th Avenue from the industrial I-1 zone to residential 1 JJ, R1 JJ zone. Do I have a motion to accept ordinance number 2022, number 5?
So moved.
So moved by Member Neary. He seemed very adamant about that. I saw that.
Wait for this for you, sir.
Well, glad to have it on the agenda. Wow, adamant second. So Member Neary and Member Baszler made first and second. Do we have any comments regarding it? All right, so we're gonna go ahead and do roll call, Ms. Ledger.
Member Neary?
Aye.
Member Neiman? Member Kelly?
Aye.
Member Lovins? Member Baszler?
Aye.
Member Bolter?
Aye.
100% on a very important move. Well done, guys.
Very critical for the property owners down there. They've been trying to invest in the property. This is a good move forward.
And if you have your microphone on, they'd all hear you about that.
Questions are three.
All right, the last second reading of the evening will be ordinance number 2022, number 6, amending the City of Dayton, Kentucky's annual budget for fiscal year July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022. Do I have a motion to accept ordinance 2022, number 6? Member Neiman's made the motion,
I'll second.
second by Member Kelly. Do you have any comments regarding the amendment of the budget?
Could we have a brief explanation of this?
Mr. Fawcett.
Yeah, I'll actually defer to Jared, and Jared, this is your handiwork. You want to come up to one of the microphones and explain a little bit about the changes here. One of the things we do, we are breaking out all the different units, which is not done in the past. So that is one item that is different in this one. But Jared, would you talk a little bit about the changes to the general funds and the miscellaneous parts?
Yes, so we did break out some funds to have some separation. So I gave you all a list of what all the changes were back when we did this first reading. But there was an incorrect amount in the revenues. We have an 80-20 grant. It was showing that we were getting 100% reimbursed for that grant, and we're only getting 80%. So we had that changed. We had to add the recreational trail grant funding to the parks budget, was $110,000 in spending and $90,000 in income, because that's the federal match that we're going to get. Sergeant Park, we removed that and put it in its own fund. We removed it from the general fund and put it into its own fund for $30,000, and we're going to put that into a CD, certificate of deposit. And so we won't be able to touch that money anymore. The deal with that money is that we have to keep $30,000 in that account. We had $3,000 added for anticipated miscellaneous expenses. We added $3,000 for the camera system that we're using tonight. Mr. Fawcett said, we separated Grant Park TIF funds and we removed $104,000 from the general fund and put it into its own account. And then the last thing was the spending for the parks, which was the $110,000 for that recreational trail grant that I mentioned before. Are there any other questions?
Just basically, I mean, it really jumps out the fund balance forward, going from 735 to 2.3 mil. That is because some of these funds that are already assigned are actually, in other words, we kind of matched them between expenses and income before. Now we're just putting them as expenses, correct?
Well, we added this because we're trying to show what will actually be in the bank account at the end of the year. Prior, they just put just enough to balance the budget, but this adds some transparency to the community and also to the council, so you can see how that fund balance changes over time based on those funding decisions that you make. So, for example, we're looking to have $2.3 million in the fund balance, and if you want to fund a project or something, that line item will give you an idea of can we afford it, what will we have in the fund balance, meaning how much will be left in the checking account at the end of the year.
Okay, because I was just a little bit confused on it. Thanks for clarifying, because a lot of times, my understanding was the fund balance forward was what we anticipated at the beginning of the budget year that we would have to take out of the reserve. But this is instead showing what we expect the reserve to be at the end of the fiscal.
Correct. And that was hidden before, well, I mean, not probably intentionally, but they just did not put it on the budget. So now we're adding it to it so you all can see how much we anticipate to have at the end of the year.
Great, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. Mr. Mayor, any more questions?
No, sir. Welcome clarification.
Any more comments regarding 2022, number 6? Roll call, please, Ms. Leonard.
Member Neiman,
Aye.
Member Kelly,
Aye.
Member Lovins,
Aye.
Member Baszler,
Aye.
Member Bolter,
Aye.
Member Neary.
Aye.
100% ayes. Moving along to the first reading, this is ordinance number 2022, number 7, an ordinance creating a new section of the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 158, reasonable accommodations in residential neighborhoods, to establish criteria and procedures for determining reasonable accommodations for sober living facilities in the city of Ordinance with fair housing laws and other laws and codes.
I'll provide a little background on this. The first, we only have one of these facilities in our community. Many communities have many more than those. And cities around North Kentucky, around the country, quite honestly, have been trying to deal with this issue. The problem is that, and I've done a lot of legal research on this issue, is that the Fair Housing Act laws and ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act laws, require you to allow these types of facilities in your communities. So if you are to try to exclude them through zoning, for instance, you will get sued, you will go to federal court, you will lose, and you'll pay a hefty amount of legal fees because of that. So what we're doing here is we're saying that we are going to make reasonable accommodations for these types of facilities, but there are certain rules that they must follow in the community. We can't prohibit them, but we can require certain rules, and these rules are based on a lot of the research that's out there in cases that have been heard and what, of course, that you can and can't do. So what we've done is we worked with Bellevue, and Bellevue and I kind of looked at a model that was in Newport, tweaked it a little bit based on some of the research I've had, but Bellevue's adopted what's very similar. I think what we did, Fred Warren and I worked on this together, both lawyers, and I made a few other adjustments based on some of my understanding of the law. So we now have some rules that these facilities must follow in the communities, and we've heard from some of the residents in the community where this one facility is, about some of the problems that they've encountered. So we hope that this will help us address those issues in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Fawcett. Again, that is the first reading. We have a few of those on the agenda tonight. See this. The next one is the first reading of ordinance number 2022, number 8, closing and vacating a portion of Dodd Drive within the Manhattan Harbor Development Area.
A little background on this as well. As many of you know, that Dodd Drive used to be the road that wrapped around the northern portion of the levee. A portion of that road was closed years ago to Manhattan Boulevard. There was one section that was not closed because the new section of the road ended at the apartments. So what this does is the final section of Dodd that goes from about where the apartments are to Mary Ingles Highway is being closed so that the new extension of Manhattan Boulevard can be completed to Mary Ingles Highway. And so that's what this is about.
Thank you, Mr. Fawcett. Next would be the ordinance number 2022, number 9, amending section 37.15 and section 99.99 of the Code of Ordinances to establish civil penalties for code enforcement violations under these code sections. I believe Mr. Fawcett might have something to say.
Yeah, I've been asked by city council members to explain this a little bit. This is the same issue that we had before the council late last year. There were some questions about it. And so I've gone back and I've kind of revamped this ordinance, and I'll kind of go through it and explain what it's about. And we discussed this also at our strategic planning session about a month ago or so, and how we can use this to help Cassie Patterson. And Cassie, I don't know if you might come up and speak to this as well.
Sure.
You're welcome to. Maybe, we have some thoughts as well. But so what we're doing here is trying to follow the KLC Model Code Enforcement Ordinance, and that allows us to assess code violation as a separate event, a separate offense for every day that the code violation is not corrected. So, so that violation will stop when the owner of the property either corrects the violation or submits evidence to Cassie that he or she or it has taken evidence to remediate the violation. So remember, we generally don't issue citations right away when we have code violations, and Cassie can go through the process, but we issue generally, unless it's a really egregious issue or a code violation needs to be issued immediately, we generally send out what's called a notice of violation, which is not any fines. It just says, hey, this property is in violation of the codes of the city. You need to fix it. You have a certain amount of time to fix that. Please do it. And then we send out a second one of those saying, hey, you're still in violation. You need to do this. And then when they don't respond to that second one, that's when we finally put a citation on the property. And then they have the right, when they get that, to appeal that to the Code Enforcement Board. So there's a lot of due process involved here that they can go through. So our experience is that most people that live in the city and own the property, when we give them a notice violation, they come to us and say, okay, I'm working on it, or I don't have the money to do it. This ordinance specifically says that if they can show financial hardship, we can waive the daily fines. So if they come to us and say, I'm taking care of it, or I have financial hardship, and they can prove it to us, which we will need evidence of that, we can work with them. So the whole idea behind this is really not to focus on those people, but to focus on these absentee property owners, like these hedge funds that buy 20 properties in our city and just let them sit there for a long time, or these absentee landlords who come down and see their properties once every 6 months, if that much. So the whole idea is to really kind of focus on them. We recognize that there are older people, there are people with limited income that have problems, paying for these repairs. And for that reason, we're working with the Housing Authority right now to create a $100,000 loan fund that if you are low income or even looking at moderate income and you have an issue that's causing a code violation, we will work with you to find a contractor to help fix those things in your house. So I'm talking to Gordon Henry at the Housing Authority, and we're both going to put up $50,000. We're using more ARPA funds, and they have some funds that they have available to start with an initial $100,000 fund to help residents, low income. These have to be owner occupied residents. These aren't for rental properties, to help them deal with any code issues they have. So Cassie, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of feel like.
Yeah, you did the opposite of what you wanted to do.
Did I turn it off?
You got it.
You're good.
So yeah, I just feel like 90% of the people, this is not gonna even apply to. So most people that are gonna fix it, they're gonna call that type of thing. Like Jay said, it's mostly out-of-state people that have never, some of them have never even looked at the property. They've never laid eyes on it, so.
And so the problem in the past is it would take us almost a half a year to get enough money accumulated to take a case to court and foreclose on it, because our process is very, it just takes a long time and it's frustrating, and people are wondering, why aren't you doing something about this property? Well, because so much time has to take place. So by streamlining this a little bit, I think we're able to do this quicker and get these things to court and have a decision made that they need to take care of the properties, or we're going to foreclose on those properties and find somebody else to buy it who will take care of it. So we've been pretty successful in that for the past year. And I'm hopeful that one day we don't have to really have an ordinance like this, but in the near future, I think this is an important ordinance for the city.
And Cassie, you've been in the role for a year and a half now?
Mhm.
It's been a great year and a half.
Thank you.
And out of that year and a half, what have you seen as far as you issue a citation or a warning to somebody, and that a homeowner in Dayton actually contacts you and tries to alleviate that warning versus somebody who would label a slumlord?
So typically what happens is, they'll call and say, I need more time, or I, don't have the money right now. I had one lady that she needed some painting done, so she had some family coming in from out of town. She said, he's gonna paint it as soon as he gets here. I said, that's fine, and she didn't. She had it completed. So I'm flexible as far as, ultimately, I'm not trying to make a big boatload of money or anything like that. I'm trying to get people to be compliant. And that's kind of where we are. We have 99% of the people compliant. We have that 1% that, like I said, they're out of town, they don't see the property, they're absentee landlords, they just walk away from the house. They think we can't afford it, it's too much work or whatever, which we have a couple of those also. And sometimes it takes that we had one, just for instance, we couldn't get a hold of them, couldn't find them. They virtually disappeared off the face of the earth. So we filed suit. The attorney had the sheriff kind of go in search of them, found them. She came in, she had no idea. She said, it was all the mail was being returned. She came in, paid all her code fines, going to sell the property. So, something like that, that's what it took to get her to realize what was going on with her property. And the neighbors the house across the street just sold for $200 and something thousand. Now, do you think they want to live across the street from a house with broken windows, boarded up doors? It kind of brings the whole block down. So our goal is to have no properties like that in the city. We don't want to see boards. We don't want to see broken windows. We want to see people living in houses.
And we've recognized that in the past, there might have been some abuses in the city in terms of code enforcement. With Cassie, that's not the case. She works really hard with people, and assuming they work with us. But the thing is if you pass this and you feel like that we are being abusive, or it's, not a fair system and people are complaining about it to you, you can simply go back to the old way of doing things. And so our focus is really not on these owner-occupied properties that are, with people with limited incomes. It's on these people are just ignoring our request that they do something with that property.
How many of these troubled properties do you think exist in Dayton? If we're passing an ordinance just to go after 20-some people, or is this in the hundreds?
I'd say maybe, what do you think, about 50?
Yeah, well, we have 50 identified as vacant and abandoned properties that, but we knocked out the first, we have a top 10 list and a second top 10 list. Our first top 10 list is done. We're now on our second top 10 list. I'd say there's at least another 30 or 40, maybe if we do that, we can relax it a little bit, but this is not inconsistent with what other cities are doing in Covington, what you did in Morgantown. This is what KLC recommends you do. But I would say at least 50 properties, and possibly more, but I'd say 50 are probably the really troublesome properties in the city.
you know, like I said, one block with one property that's literally sitting there deteriorating is, and I mean, it just brings the whole block down.
Yeah, there's a concept called the broken windows theory.
Mhm.
And it basically says that if you have a property and it's got a broken window, and people think, okay, well, I'll break the other window. When they start breaking the other windows in those properties, then the next thing you know, 2 properties down, they start breaking out the windows. So our goal is to try to fix those broken windows, whether it's through the legal process or code enforcement, whatever the case may be. So, and that's what creates crime too. And the chief knows, that's what goes back 30 years in police enforcement about broken windows. So, I mean, it sounds simple, but it is simple. You gotta address these things or your city will go down.
Thank you, Ms. Patterson, for your time. Wait, never even said.
I don't know who. What
Ask
are you on?
Cassie, and then-
Cassie, okay. I was wondering if you could just kind of explain this one little part. It says, a violation of this ordinance if a violation of this ordinance continues after due notice has been served, it shall be deemed a separate offense up to a maximum of 5,000 per action. Yes, so if they don't call me, they don't, make any repairs or anything. So basically the fine will continue to accumulate until it comes to $5,000.
So she can find $50 a day. She can find $50 a day.
Yes.
Or $100, between 50 and 100.
Right.
And that goes up until 5,000, and that's the cutoff.
Mhm.
But, but as soon as they tell you, hey, I'm fixing it, you can stop that.
Right.
And you can waive them under our ordinance. You guys can say, okay, you're fixing it, now we can waive it, but that's up to you. So.
And I have waived fees before, people, I mean, it happens. Somebody gets down on their luck, grandma was in the hospital for 2 months, things like that.
Can you put that wording down in the ordinance that says that, it just doesn't have that, but it also has, you can approach whoever's supposed to.
It's in there, so
Okay.
I'll read it to you. So each, the code enforcement officer may suspend daily fines if the property owner submits documentation or provides substantial evidence showing that it has taken action to remediate the code violations. If so, she enters a written notation in the file. If the property owner timely appeals, if the property owner timely appeals the violations to the code enforcement board, the board itself may waive the fines accrued under this section. The property owner can show an attempt to remediate the code violations in a timely fashion, or that a financial hardship has prevented the property owner from remediating the violations. That's left up to the code board to make that decision, and they'll have to present evidence to the code board that those conditions exist.
And we have waived fines.
But you were saying that the maximum is 5,000, but you also said that each day that they don't respond to it becomes its own, so that each day would be 5,000.
No, each day is whatever, it's between 50 and 100, but the maximum is 5,000. So let's say you have a $100 fine. So after 50 days, that's $5,000. You're done. That's it.
And then what? Let's say.
Then
you foreclose.
Broken windows, can't afford it, you charge $5,000.
And then we say you
I
need,
still can't pay, it goes into a lien.
we put a lien on the property, and
I'm
then
allowed to have my broken windows.
you can have it. Yeah, you
Or
can.
can they reapply broken windows again and start it all over?
For whatever initial violations are cited, if it's broken windows, then that's it. But if they have other issues that come up, let's say now they have trash that's being thrown in the property, we may cite it again, that starts a whole new thing. So before that initial fine, that the cause for that fine, that stopped at $5,000. So
That one offense.
that one offense.
But if they have 5 offenses, you can get them for
That's right.
25,000.
You can keep on doing it. So what happens is, what we get $5,000, we'll put a lien on the property, and then when it's sold, we'll recover it. What you don't realize too is that in addition to the code fines, more often than not, Rick Lucas is having to send his crews out there, and we're having to spend money for plywood, materials,
Grass cutting,
grass cutting. So
cleanup.
all that money that the taxpayers are paying for, we put a separate lien on the property for that as well, to recover our costs and expenses for maintaining that property that someone else should be maintaining themselves.
And typically, this isn't, as we've already gone over, this isn't your average grandma that, you know, the widow who couldn't paint gutters. This is people who live in that really nice house in Oregon that Donna looked at. That was a nice house, wasn't it, Donna?
Real nice.
And I imagine that person, gentleman, lady, had never been in Dayton, Kentucky. Those are the people that are typically buying these houses on Zillow or whatever and never seeing the property.
I've
And,
never been to the property, have no one in the property, it's just sitting.
right,
And we know what happens to a house that sits with no one. Just-
curious.
Yes,
It's deterioration by neglect, is basically what happens.
yes.
A great example is 701 Boone and 705 Boone. Those are two properties where the property owners died, whoever the heirs were didn't care, or they died, they're gone, and it just sits there. And so those are two that we put liens on, and they built up enough that we took them to court, foreclosed on them, and now one's been demolished and one should be demolished here pretty soon.
So we're not going after little ladies or young families who are trying to get their start. It's going after people who
I guess I'm still just confused by the sentence of each day a violation continues after due notice has been served shall be deemed a separate offense.
So we give them notices of violation, and then we do a final, if we give them two notices, we do a citation of violation. And for that citation says, okay, you've got 3 broken windows, your door is open to the public, people are going in. That's the citation. Each day that citation is not fixed, those code issues are not fixed, is a $100 fine, or a $50 fine, between $50 and $100. And so once they fix it, that stops. But until they fix it, if they don't fix it, it goes all the way up to $5,000. Now, that's it. So we can't cite them again for that, but we can cite them again for if they're dumping trash in their yard or whatever. You see them all the time, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know,
Or the
their
windows.
chimney falls down on the roof and,
Gutter falling off,
Yeah,
things like that.
yeah, so, the idea is just to make it easier for us to push these things forward and to have leverage, quite honestly, to get people to fix their properties.
Sure. In a situation like that, like a gutter fell off and you would cite them, in your experience, is it usual that then they call you? Do you still fine them? Or do they kind of say, I didn't know, I have it under control, I hired a guy, and that would be waived? What do you mean, like I send them a notice of violation. So that's no fine. So I send a notice of violation, I say, okay, and it depends on what the case is. If I send a notice in January for, let's say paint, I'm not gonna say get it done by February, because it's not gonna get done by February. But say for instance, somebody's gutter's falling off, I'll give them 30 days. Say, okay, you have 30 days. Typically, they'll call and say, I can't find anybody that you can give me an estimate, can you give me another 30 days? So what I do is I put it in the calendar, put their phone number down, and then in another 30 days, usually they call me, but if they don't, they forget, I'll call them and say, hey, what's going on? Yes, I got an estimate, no, I don't yet. So I'm pretty flexible, sometimes maybe too much, but I'd rather, ultimately the main goal is to get it fixed, not to send them a bunch of citations. So we have one right now, they can't find anybody to fix their gutters.
So at what point do you decide to cite?
So
You feel like.
typically I'll call them and talk to them and say, well, if you've had 6 months, you've had 4 months, if I'm gonna give you another 30 days, then I'm gonna have to send you a citation. And usually, I can't think of one person that has actually called me that I've had to send them a citation.
And if you do send them a citation, then they have the right to appeal that to the code
Correct.
enforcement board.
Correct.
How long do they have to appeal?
10 days.
Thank you.
Sure. And if you guys think of any other questions, just you can call me or email me.
Any Anybody else with a question or comment on the first reading of 2022, number 9? All right, that's closed. Next on the agenda is the first reading of Ordinance 2022, number 10. It's the amending the text of the city's zoning code to allow professional offices as permitted use in the residential 1 JJ, also known as the R1 JJ zone. Ms. Legend, or who read that?
City of Dayton, Kentucky, ordinance number 2022, number 10. An ordinance amending the text of the zoning code of the city of Dayton, Kentucky to amend the text of the R1JJ residential 1 JJ zone to allow professional offices as permitted use in this zone. First reading.
Thank you, Ms. Ledger.
Well,
Next up is the first reading, the ordinance 2022, number 11, amending chapter 110 of the Dayton Code of Ordinances to change the occupational license fee assessed on wages and compensation of employees working in the city from 2.0 to 2.5%. Ms. Ledger, please.
City of Dayton, Kentucky, ordinance 2022, number 11. An ordinance amending chapter 110 of the City of Dayton Code of Ordinances to change the occupational license fee assessed on the wages and compensation of employees working in the city from 2% to 2.5%. First reading.
That is a first reading. Thank you, Ms. Ledger. Last on the first readings, ordinance 2022, number 12. This is the authorizing placement of tables and seating on public sidewalks and right-of-ways in the city and establishing licensing and rules of regulations of such use. Ms. Ledger, please.
City of Dayton, Kentucky, ordinance number 2022, number 12. An ordinance authorizing placement of tables and seating on public sidewalks and right-of-ways in the city of Dayton, Kentucky, and establishing a licensing process and rules and regulations for such use. First reading.
That was the first reading. Next on the agenda are orders and resolutions. There's only one tonight, and that would be 2022, number 17 Romeo. That's the authorization to enter into a development agreement with Ordinance Development, LLC, to redevelop the Ramey/Burton building at 635 6th Avenue, and providing a forgivable loan to the developer in exchange for developer rehabbing the structure and providing affordable housing in this development under the terms of the agreement, payable from federal funding and under the American Rescue Program Act. That is a long order, but nonetheless, it requires a motion. I have a motion to accept Order Resolution 2022, number 17 Romeo.
So moved.
Member Volter has moved. Do I have a second? Second by Member Lovins, which opens up the floor to comments. The comments regarding number 2022, number 17 Romeo.
So this commits the developer, which is Orleans Development LLC. This commits them to having 4 of the units, for at least 5 years, to be meeting the criteria of the affordable housing.
Yeah, they call it attainable housing now, but affordable housing is what the previous term was, yes. So
What's the new term?
attainable housing.
Attainable.
It's not quite as, I guess it sounds better, but, so yeah, so that attainable housing or affordable housing is basically low to moderate income. So people with low to moderate incomes, which is 8% of the median income of a person that in the community is eligible to rent these at a lower price than the market rate. So
Is it the rate of the community or the rate of the
it's
whole?
rated the
country?
MSA, it's a greater Cincinnati MSA,
Okay,
not just our community, but I think the greater community.
including the Ohio side of the
That's
area.
correct.
That's right. And they're gonna be 10, I've not seen the plans, but my understanding is there's gonna be 10 units.
I believe that's right.
So 40% of the units are going to be attainable housing.
That's correct.
And this is all being paid out of our ARPA money.
It is, and there will be a promissory note that will be on the property for the 5 years to require them to do that. And if they don't, then that's a breach of the note, and we can recover the money for it. They've done this before. They did a project like this in Covington, so I know the developer, and I'm certain they will not breach it, but if they do, we've got our mortgage on the property, and we got a promissory note backing up our loan to them. And then if, for the 5-year period, and they've satisfied these conditions, that loan is forgiven.
Now, is there any start date on this project as part of this agreement?
Yeah, well, they don't get paid until they get a permit, and then they don't get the second payment on the loan until they are substantially completed. And then the final payment's made when they get their CEO for the residential property. So it's spread out over time. So the start date, they'd like to start tomorrow, but they're waiting on Kentucky Heritage Council. Christina probably knows more about this than I do. This is her expertise, to sign off on their tax credits. They can't touch the property until Kentucky Heritage Council is signed off. They've gotten approval to be on the National Register of Historic Places, but until the local, they call it Historic Preservation Office, signs off on it, they can't get their federal or state tax credits. So they gotta wait until that happens. You know, government moves slow, but they're hopeful that in the next month or so they will get the thumbs up. And once they do, they're ready to rock. So.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Here you've got a date on page 3. It says it'll commence as soon as, it says it will commence as soon as practical on or shortly after May 1st.
If they can do that by in May, they should have approval, but they can't move until America gives the okay from downstate, frankly.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to make sure that there was, I know there's been other projects where we've committed money to it or assigned money to it.
Right.
With no definitive date.
They're ready, and so is Catalina Development Corporation. They're contributing to this project too. They're ready to move forward. But adult these federal tax credits, and you can't touch anything that they say you can't touch. So if you go in there and start rehabbing now, and instead of doing something, you can do some preliminary work, getting stuff out, but don't touch anything until they sign off on it, because if you do, you lose all your opportunities to recover tax credits for that project. So they're going to be very careful about that.
Do we have any other comments regarding 2022 number 17 Romeo? No more comments. So a roll call, please, Ms. Ledger.
Member Kelly?
Aye.
Member Lovins? Aye. Member Baszler?
Aye.
Member Bolter?
Aye.
Member Neary?
Aye.
Member Heath?
Aye.
Unanimously passes order 2022 number 17 Romeo. Next on the agenda is a department head report. So we like to have a little fun with this one because sometimes these things can get boring. Chief Atkins rolling his eyes. But on we have a spin the wheel app on our phone. It's available on Android or iPhone, whatever you choose. On which person goes first, because they may get out here a little bit earlier. So we'll go ahead and spin the wheel. Cassie, you must have this on lockdown.
I think I got first last time.
You did. That's why I'm kind of concerned that you might have access to my phone.
All right, so we have my report. We are kind of excited. 705 being sold at auction. Somebody bought that, they're gonna tear it down.
No, we did 705.
705.
We did like 705.
No, I said somebody bought
Oh,
that.
yeah, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, somebody else bought that.
Yeah.
What else going on? A property on Dayton sold,
408.
408. They are gutting it. If you get a chance, right by, they tore off the enclosure on the front porch. It already looks
It looks
better.
great.
It already
It looks so great.
Yes. What else is going on? There's just a lot of dumpsters around, so there's a lot of stuff going on, so. Yeah, I know.
I pass it every day with my wife, and then today I was like, where did this come from?
It looks great. So, yeah. A lot of stuff going on. I like to see it. That's it.
Thanks, Cassie. I mean, it's been a really good month with 408 Dayton.
It has.
And
And fourth,
fourth,
yep, the yard's clean. We met the landlord. I had him come in. He's in good standing with the city now. He had some bills that taxes, license, things like that. So he's in good standing. I had a good communication email with him. He emailed me, had somebody come out over the weekend. The whole entire yard has been cleaned. He's kind of on the fence whether he wants to sell it or, so, but yeah, it's going good. Things are looking up. I like to see things turning around, so.
Fantastic work. Does anybody have any questions for Cassie on credit enforcement? All right.
All right.
Thanks, Pat. All right, we have a few other departments up there on the wheel. Sorry, Mr. Hatfield, it is Chief Atkins. Fire, you are up. Maybe it's fixed, I don't know.
Good evening. You all have my report. A couple of things I want to go over. Make notice of. Runs are up. We're continuing to be above where this time last year. If you look, at the end of April last year, we were 472 squad runs, and we hit 500 a day. So we still got 11 days left, so I expect us to be 520, 530 by the end of April. Fire runs are up as well. For the total, at the end of April last year, we were 690, we're 730. We had a fire today. Squad just continuing on the wheels off of it, so it's an upward trend. I'm not sure there's multiple causes of that. We had a lot of people that in the city that are sick, people that use ambulances for primary care, some people that could probably have some assistance from some other agencies or other avenues that could be helped that we end up having to take care of. It's like I said in our strategic planning session, we're social workers, we're plumbers, we're electricians, and we wear a lot of hats. So runs are up. Continue to have meetings with both cities regarding our budget. I stood here this time last year talking about my concern about retention. And it's, the city is a huge first step. And, if you go back and read my report, it's a good first step. But we need to continue to figure ways to retain people we have. I've laid 5 job postings, many job postings on both city administrators' desks that we're competing against. So I just want to make sure that the cities, it stays in the forefront of their minds that we need to make sure we take care of the fire department, retain the people we have in the fire, and Dave will say the same thing. He's competing against cities with bigger budgets, bigger salaries, and it's just trying to retain the good people we have. So that's a continued concern of mine. Fire board meeting tomorrow night, and that's really about all I have. If anybody has any questions we're still down to injuries. They're 4 to 6 months each. They're significant injuries. They're off duty, but both of them had surgery, so it's significant rehab and recovery times for those.
Does anyone have any questions for Chief Atkins? Well, thank you very much for your work for the city, sir.
Sir, thank you all.
Comes down to 2. It could be off. We don't know. Nope. It is red for Public Works. Chief Hatfield, you're the short stick.
Sorry I didn't get a report in, but I haven't been in my office too much lately.
Understandable.
I possibly hired, as long as you and Jay agree, we can hire that young boy that came out yesterday, I think it was. I offered him the job, it's whether or not you guys agree to it. Yeah, if he does, he'll start May 9th. And it could be sooner, but right now he's wanting to shoot for May 9th. But he wanted to give it 2 weeks notice. Seems like a really good kid. 23 years old. So that's gonna help. And been spending a lot of time down at the old YMCA building for about 3.5 weeks. And Jerry now, Joe's had a lot of help. I mean, we're getting it done, and
Looking good.
the final doors won't be until the end of the month. So the next council meeting probably won't be able to happen down there. And some of it will be under.
Crushing our dreams with that, Rick.
Well, I mean, the guy would get them in. I mean, if he could get them in, he'd get them done.
We need doors.
I don't know if it's a CO and build the doors. I don't know. Well, we'll talk.
Yeah.
We'll talk with the
They're gonna-
building department, see what they say. But we have fire doors in there, so maybe we can get one. We'll find out.
Either way, you've been doing a great job at the community
So
center.
I appreciate it. Like I said, I've had help, and it's been a pretty busy month and a half for us. And I did get Gilliland Park cut today. It took 7 hours, myself and Jordan. So we got that cut looking good. We're just busy. I mean, we got plenty of work to do. We've only cut 3 pieces of property this year so far. Normally, I would have the flood wall cut 4 to 5 times this time than the other year. And I haven't been on it one time yet. It's either raining or something comes up. But other than that, I mean, that's all I have. If anybody's got any questions or anything.
Any questions for Rick and Public Works? Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Well, there's no reason to spin the wheel when we do
All right, y'all have my report. Everything's pretty much status quo for us this month. Nothing really new. It's about kind of where we're at with runs and things like that. Just some notables. We did lose an officer to Highland Heights. And we were pretty quick in getting a new, I advertised, I don't know if you guys saw, for new hires and laterals. We had an okay amount for laterals. Pretty substantial for new hires, which was pretty nice. I think we had like 50 to 60 applicants. So it's kind of good news to see that people are wanting to get into law enforcement. It's something that we were battling for the last 2 years. Nobody wanted to do this job. No one wanted to be into law enforcement, and now it seems like things have changed, and people are actually wanting to be involved and try to be change. So that's kind of a good thing to see. So we did hire Anthony Keene. He comes from Falmouth PD. He is a 3-year patrolman there. He's a resident of Covington. He's got one child and one on the way in June. So we're here in June. So we'll have a new child then, but he's going through training right now. He'll be riding with us during the day this week, and then he'll be on second shift for the next couple of weeks during our FT. Secondly, I just want to give kudos to Gil Marksberry, Canine Officer Gil. He was in a competition last week down in Scottsville, Kentucky, along with about 40 other handlers from 8 different states. They compete with different things, with apprehension, stolen items, narcotics, things like that. So Kai is a new dog, so he's only been here for a year or so. So he came in second place in the narcotics division. So that's pretty good for a brand new dog. He's very quick learner. And we're proud to have him on the team, and he did pretty good. So he goes works with him really well. So Gilbert also does a great job. So I just want to give kudos to Gilbert. He does it.
Fantastic. Thanks for your update, for your work in the community. Does anybody have any questions for Chief Advil? All right, Chief.
Thank you.
Good evening, sir. That concludes the department head report, and we'll move along to the city administrator report, Mr. Foster.
Well, this is going to be the summer of construction, infrastructure construction in the city. As many of you know, the intersection at O'Fallon, 5th and Manhattan Boulevard was done, and last week or so. New curbs, sidewalks are there, new stop signs, including flashing stop sign at that intersection. We still have to put in the thermal markings for the stop bars and that. Is there anything else we need to do? Signage is all done, right?
Yeah, signing's done and A&H safety, they told me they would probably be there Friday
Okay.
to get all the markings located and so they can put them down.
We got a lot of people complimenting us, thanking the city council for doing it. Runners and pedestrians and people driving their cars saying this is much better situation than we've had in the past. So safer and hopefully the stop sign that's flashing now will make sure people stop there. And if they don't, we'll have the chief and his crew make sure they do. So that's done. So we were also expecting the 6th Avenue bump outs to start around this time, but they've been delayed by weather by a couple of weeks. So Mike Hager says it looks like that will happen in May. And then of course, after they get done with the 6th Avenue bump outs, they'll move up to Dayton Avenue on the hill, do the sidewalks up there, and then move to Dayton Pike and do the sidewalks there. If you travel down that road, as I do every day, you'll see a bunch of survey markings there. So it's all marked, ready to go. They just need to get here and start working on it. So that's good. You may have seen around town the number of ADA ramps that have been installed. Those are in anticipation of getting our bids back for repaving. Indeed, they've been doing that under our contract that we did with Bellevue on concrete work. It was cheaper for us to hire them to do it than to bid it, because what happens is those contractors, asphalt contractors, basically hire a concrete contractor to do that work, and then they add an upcharge to the city. So we're saving money by having them do it rather than doing it through the repaving contract. So the bids on the repaving are expected to be in at the end of this month. So hopefully we'll be able to get those streets repaved. And of course, the state's going to repave 6th Avenue and 4th Avenue as part of Route 8. And so before that happens, we're trying to get Kenton and 4th Avenue done. There's a stormwater project there. We want to get that done before that happens. So we're working on that. And that's our next major stormwater project, and then Urban's after that. And so other stormwater projects we're working on, we're working with River Point. Just sent them a design for trying to improve some of the problems they have up there at the top of the development. That will be a joint project with ST1 and Homeowner Association. And City doing the same thing in Grand Park. We've had several iterations there about how we can solve some issues there, and we're still waiting to hear back from the HAOA on that as well. So it's going to be a busy summer, and that's not to mention we're waiting back from the Highway Department on approval of the second phase of our final design plan for the second phase of Riverfront Commons. We're hoping to sign off on that soon, and we can get that started this year. And of course, the road, Manhattan Boulevard, that is expected to be completed this year as well. So it's going to be a busy summer and fall construction.
I have a quick question about that intersection plan, the Family Dollar. Did we ever find out who actually is technically the owner of the trees there? Because even like when you're heading into Manhattan Harbor, if like some of those trees were either cut back, you could actually, there's the dumpster thing that blocks kind of the view, but as you're approaching that intersection, you can see if there's another car there, but it's obstructed by the trees.
Yeah, so that was before my time, Rick. Was that, and I don't know if it was here at that time.
We cut those trees, we cut that tree back.
Did you cut it back? I asked you to do that.
Yeah, we cut it back about 2 feet behind the wall itself to put a dumpster.
But they are like city's trees on the tree line?
I think the city owns the property and
The developer put those in.
developer put them in.
That's what I understand. So,
That, as far as I know, that's who put them in.
yeah, we cut them back, Scott. I think, I haven't been down to look at it lately. The problem is you also have that dumpster wall.
You can see beyond the
Yeah.
dumpster.
Yeah, well, I agree.
beyond the tree.
Yeah, so if they're not, I'll look at it.
That looks pretty good.
Okay, it's better.
You can
Okay.
pull, as you stop at the stop sign, you just pull forward just a little bit, and you can actually see down Fifth Street.
Okay. Right, yeah, I'll look at it. I'll check to see whether that was a concern we had, and you already done that though, right?
Yeah, I did it the day we put the stop sign in.
Okay, anything else?
Thank you, Mr. Fawcett. It's a very exciting year for 2022 with Dave. I can't wait for New Year's Eve. We're gonna look back on a lot of great things that happened this year underneath this administration. It's fun. Next up is the city minister attorney report. In the absence of Mr. Evanson, does anybody have any questions or anything we should relay to him? Or go ahead and pass on the city attorney's report. Next on the agenda would be the audience report. And this is anybody who wants to bring up, anybody in the audience that would like to address council administration on things that weren't on tonight's agenda. So if you'd like to do so, if you'd like to do so, the podium is yours.
All right, I'll say one.
All right, please state your name and
Make sure you turn your mic on.
good to see you, Kathy.
I don't care what we do with that intersection for me and
We make Kathy.
Oh. Maybe I'm not. No matter what we do with the intersection of Green and Harvard, it doesn't seem to matter in some respects, and I think it's an improvement, no doubt. But I swear, once a week, give or take, I almost get T-boned by somebody who ignores a stop sign coming from O'Fallon to Manhattan Harbor. And I don't think there's a darn thing we can do short of having somebody pointing a rifle at them to get them to stop on some occasions. Unfortunately, I think the intersection is a cluster and what we try to do. And that was nobody's fault it's here, but there was, in my opinion, really traffic planning for that at the very beginning. So short of Family Dollar closing and accessing that property, I don't think there's gonna be a whole lot of improvement. And even if we did have that property, you still would have a logistical challenge of accessing all of the streets and the traffic patterns associated with it. But I do very much appreciate the fact that there's a little bit more visibility now because of the sidewalk and where the stop sign is from that direction. So I do appreciate that. So I just wanted to let you know, it's noticeable, it's helpful, and it's never going to totally solve the problem. But all you can do is the best you can do, and you've done that.
Appreciate those kind words. I'd like to take this second to appreciate Sarah Shepherd. Sarah, I believe she moved from Dayton. She got a job somewhere else, but she was the one who brought it to our attention and made the city council come out and sit there and watch cars that were blowing through the stop sign. And that was the catalyst that made this happen. So thank you very much for your kind words, and thanks for people like Sarah that bring these things to council.
And I wish there was a really viable solution short of having a member of the police department just sit there all day long, which clearly is not practical. But
Well, maybe we'll have a stoplight available. It's not being used on June.
and how many directions do you think you can point that thing? Just out of curiosity.
Thank you, Ms. Gordon. Council, would like to have any unfinished business announced?
Well, since Joe brought it up, how does everybody feel the four-way stop is going on 6th Avenue?
I absolutely love it. And I was the one who was against it because obviously I live a block away from school, my kid can't walk. So multiple trips, but now, definitely get it out completely.
I personally feel like the traffic flow is better most of the time.
I'll say as somebody who uses the crosswalks, you know, I work at City Hall, I live on the avenue. I cross across the street 5 times a day. 6 times, I guess that would make more sense. But you see more separation between cars that I can actually cross across, and people are slowing down. So I think it's a good thing.
Thank you, Mr. Neary. Well, it brings up the question, unless somebody else wants to chime in. It brings up the question that I posed privately. The test goes through May 30th or 31st. At that point, who determines we've been fighting with KYTC on this. Who determines whether or not to turn the light back on or take it down?
It's a highway, KYTC makes that determination.
We can make a recommendation.
Yeah, and I would recommend maybe at the next meeting that you will pass a resolution, if you are supportive of it, that it remain this way, and we will send that to, Bob Yeager at District 6.
That's what I was hoping to hear, thank you. Well, actually, I was hoping to hear that we would have a vote on it,
No,
but I think you're right. And community members also and business owners, their input is, and the school district. Because you and I both had very positive comments from parents who live on the wrong side of 6. And the one lady, she would never let her kids walk into school. She always had to get in the car, take them to school, because she didn't like crossing 6th Street. And she's like, I'm fine with them crossing there now. So I think if the community, the businesses, the school district and council and maybe even administration were to approve of it, at least in writing, that would have a lot of influence with KYTC.
I think that maybe we ought to ask the different schools to pass a similar resolution. And then also ask the Main Street Board at their next meeting to do the same thing. And then submit all those to KYTC.
Because actually, I didn't think it would happen, but now that it's a 4-way stop, it's actually 10 times safer than that red light, because that red light, you're flying through. But everyone's now cautious of stopping, you know what I mean? So it slows it down. I mean, obviously I'm there in the mornings, afternoon, it works better. It's actually safer because they all have to stop.
Just so that we're in one red light.
There's still a
The first
repair.
week I did. But I will say, I mean, I do that intersection because I have to be at Hansman's at 6:25 because my child needs bakery donuts every day. And then to turn around, get her to school, come back through, you know what I mean, to get to work, turn around, do the same thing on the way. It is a game changer.
Not everybody stops completely, but everybody does at least slow down, and they stop when there are
I think it
pedestrians.
slows the trucker down
Yeah.
completely.
That's a good one.
I mean, it's changed. And I didn't think that would happen. I thought we would have issues of them just going through it and never being an incident, but it
On
has
my way here, I
slowed.
saw someone use it as a roundabout. They did a full circle in that intersection. But they felt safe enough to do so.
Aren't you allowed to do that? Because everybody does it in front of the train station. Is that legal? Is it legal?
No.
To use a 4-way stop as a roundabout?
Or to turn around for the fire department?
No.
Yeah, she should have got
Yeah, like you can't turn around.
Citizens arrest. Yeah, you're out too.
I was gonna say, I've also gotten
I thought it was legal.
good positive feedback about the stop sign, and, I walk as well, and I definitely don't mind crossing at that intersection now, versus, trying to peek around, hoping nobody's coming flying. That's
I like
last,
it
so.
because I live on 4th, so when it's time for me to get donuts, I could not go to that light, so I'm gonna do like 90 down by school and blah, 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 to get, so I can get back on the road.
Mhm.
And this is, man,
I see people walking
I'm not take
across
off
the
through
street.
the alley or
slowing down.
anything crazy.
That's neat. Appreciate that. Any other unfinished business, please?
I would like to give props to whoever owns Riverside. I think it looks great.
That'd be
See
the
what
Tell
they
family.
put up?
The wood siding,
I love it.
it was great.
Like, I think the whole thing is,
The roof was good.
I love the brick, everything. Like,
Great.
I'm just saying, I
Sure they'd
think
be
we gotta
happy.
give them a little bit, since it's been an eyesore for,
Many years. So, yeah. I'd agree with you as well. It is a very good looking building right now.
do we know exactly what's going in there?
I don't think we can comment on that. I know that they want to expand their store. And I believe they will have some space available to the left of it, to the east of it, that will be available. So, Mr. Ebert's Meats, if you're available.
Yeah.
But then again, we have great enhancements.
No, it would be Hanson's Deli.
You can't beat Hansman's Deli, it's the best. The chicken salad. Any other unfinished business? Christina?
I was just gonna ask you when they were gonna be finished with the construction. Did you ever hear when they're gonna be done?
As far as,
As Riverside?
no, we don't have it.
Okay.
It's looking really good. As far as, you know, they were putting up the wood structure today, the new windows, last week, so I'd say they're kind of in probably the home stretch. But I have no idea what they're doing on the inside, so I can't answer that.
Do you know if they've got permission for your signage yet?
I don't believe that they have submitted for any permission for signage.
They had previously submitted something, like a year ago, but I don't know that it was approved because it didn't satisfy our requirements, so I don't know if they've submitted anything new since that time.
Any other unfinished business?
Since they should probably acknowledge the Civic Club for putting on the Easter egg hunt this past Sunday after a reschedule on Saturday. And thank you to, Phil for bringing the money.
That was on my list of unfinished business, so thank you, Member Kelly, for bringing up. Big kudos to the Civic Club and volunteers that showed up through the day. Once again, a successful event. Any other unfinished business?
I'll just take a little second to let the people in Dayton know that we do have a couple more spots left in the Dayton Community Garden if you would like a bed. It's not working.
Oh, no.
If they would like a bed, then you still have time to do that, and you just reach out to the Facebook Dayton Community Garden page, and we'll meet you down there and assign you a plot. But it's looking really good down there. We have a lot of people, which we usually do at the very beginning, that are gonna start planting there this year. We hope to see Miss Jess Lovins again, but we haven't seen her yet. So yeah, just reach out. It's great to have a community down there growing food.
I'm helping your wife do crafts Sunday, so put that on record.
I would also like to mention the flower sale that's going to be happening the Saturday before Mother's Day, May 7th, down at, what are we calling the center now? Town Center? It's not a park though, but
There's some people
it's so semantically, we need to figure that one out. Yeah, this thing is.
Yeah, it's the 7th.
Okay, so yeah, a plant sale May 7th for Mother's Day. Go down there and buy your mom a plant. That's it. One more.
Quarter option Saturday night for the VFW Scholarship Fund.
Final Friday is coming up on the final Friday this month. Please come out and visit our local businesses. Please approach them. What do you want, Kathy? What do you want?
I just want to know if there has been a date assigned, or what do you want to call it, for citywide yard sale?
June 11th.
Okay.
We're doing it with Bellevue.
It's a mutual city event this year, so you'll have twice as many places to buy stuff that you most definitely need. June 11th, you can sell all the stuff you want,
All right,
most of the stuff you want.
thank you.
Any other unfinished business and events that you want to talk about? Oh, what you got? Oh, you're just reaching for your pen. Okay. All right, we're closing it out. Next up is new business. We're going to do new business in the grass. All right, we're going to close that out too. Do we have any reason for executive session this evening? All right, this was a very effective and important council meeting. If anybody would like to make a motion to adjourn,
So move.
so. I can't believe Mr. Volter is always the first to do so. Member Ewan's done the second. We have all in favor? Any nays, any abstentions? So moved. Have a great April.
I'll put the contract back. Not 100%.